The Books Podcast, presented by Tim Hague.
Welcome to the Books Podcast. I'm Tim Hague. Bit of a sideways move today. What used to be called comic books have undergone a total transformation in nature and status in the 21st century, with books such as Watchmen and V for Vendetta attracting serious critical attention. You'll remember that previous editions of Books Podcast have featured a biography of the great Stan Lee, the man behind Marvel Comics, and Joel Meadows' sumptuous survey of comic creators. In this episode, we're going to get right into it and consider a specific series of comics, Resident Alien, by Peter Hogan and Steve Parkhouse. And we are very happy to welcome Peter Hogan to the show.
I ask you, gentlemen of the jury, is this the kind of book you'd like your wives and servants to read?
Peter, welcome to the Books Podcast.
Nice to be here.
Well, you're the I'm right. You're the writer of Resident Alien. Steve Parkhouse does the artwork, isn't it?
That's right.
So you have written actually a very successful and actually rather good. I want to call it a comic, and of course, it's the structure of it is that it's periodical. But let's talk about the concept. You came up with an original angle on this notion of the alien on Earth. What was that? What were you thinking when you said, I'm going to do this instead of...
Well, what happened was, when you're a writer, if you're an artist, you can take your portfolio along and somebody can open it up and look at it and see what you're doing. But when you're a writer, it's a lot harder because you've just got a bunch of papers that they might read or they might not. So I'd learnt over the years that it was helpful when you were getting something off the ground to go in as a team with an artist. And then even if they'd only done one drawing, people can go, oh, I see, and then, give you a chance.
There's a thing about comic books, isn't there? Because, of course, it has to look right, otherwise nobody will pick it up and read it. But then it has to read well, otherwise they'll put it back down again.
Well, I think comics has never had a problem finding good artists. They've always been there. Good writers is more of a kind of, I would say it's more of a kind of recent development, at any rate in this country, Europe and the rest of the world, Japan, whatever, there's been much more of a kind of adult uptake for comics, for decades. But now it's a more recent thing over here.
So your alien is he's not invading the Earth. He's not probing anybody. He's not eating us.
Well, what happened was I decided to team up with Steve Parkhouse, who I'd worked with before. Uh-huh. And did the obvious question of, Steve, what do you want to draw? And he said he wanted to do something with aliens. So I went away and thought about it, and Resident Alien is kind of what I came up with. But we did talk, the two of us talked for a long time at the start about what we wanted to do and what we didn't want to do. And the one things that the biggest thing that we didn't want to do was to have the alien be the villain. The alien had been, in our culture, had been predominantly the villain for decades.
Yeah, didn't want to do War of the Worlds.
Didn't want to do War of the Worlds, didn't want to do Alien, didn't want to do, anything which was sort of invading us or hurting us or anything like that. So we came up with a thing of sort of like, well, what if he's just a nice guy who got shipwrecked here and is keeping his head down, trying to survive, and also, trying to do something to stop himself from getting, bored, stupid. So he gets interested in, the idea of being an amateur detective. So that was kind of, all at the heart of it. And I think we were, it's weird because, I get interviewed and people go, were you influenced by E.T.? It's like, no, we weren't influenced by E.T. We were influenced by things like My Favorite Martian.
Oh, the sitcom, the American sitcom, yeah.
And just that idea of the fact that, the guy living next door to you might not be all that he seems to be.
So this alien is Harry van der Spiegel.
Yes.
Van der Spiegel is, if in Dutch, if from the Mirror, something like that.
I think it's literally in the Mirror.
Did you mean anything by that? Oh, in the Mirror.
Well, I thought, yes. I mean, I was looking... I called him Harry because for some reason I thought of a friend of mine who was Dutch and still is Dutch. And I thought, well, I can't use his surname, so I'll have a look at some Dutch surnames. So I came up with, a list of those, and I saw this thing which said, Van der Spiegel was, the mirror thing. And I thought, well, that's rather nice in that, he's kind of a mirror of our society. But it got a little weird because I don't think, when they did the TV show, I don't think they knew this. But they'd made the decision to have him sort of appear as human most of the time. But the first time that you glimpse him as an alien is in the mirror. And it's on the original poster and it heavily features certainly in the first season. So that was just an odd coincidence.
Well, this is the thing now. In the comic, we always see Harry as an alien.
Yeah.
But humans don't see him as an alien. Why not?
When I never was that specific about it, but you assume, because we know that there are a few people that can see him as human, but they're very rare. So you kind of assume that in some way he's hypnotizing them.
There is a passage in the very first one,
yes,
where when they first he's first approached. As far as the audience is concerned,
yeah,
he's saying, "Don't see me as an alien. Don't see me as an alien," and it works.
Yes.
So he can do this. He can project.
That's right, and the audience, the readership, is smart enough to just go with that. The advantage, I thought long and hard about how we were going to do this, and whether or not we could in the comics have him be an alien, and sometimes, and then human other times. And I thought at the time, no, this would just be confusing because it's the kind of thing that you could do, in TV or film, because it's a matter of sort of, it'll just go smoothly in a couple of minutes and people will ride with it. In the comics, it would just be a mess. Also, the idea of having an alien on every page made it visually interesting. Mm-hmm. So even if you've got a really mundane people talking in a cafe kind of scene, there's an alien there. And I think it worked.
I think it does. But although he can make people see him, one person in 1,000 isn't taken in, which of course you can have enormous fun with, and they do that in the TV show as well. You do it particularly well in the comic. There's a lovely scene where a child draws a picture of Harry, and of course she draws what she sees, and everybody goes, "Oh, that's interesting. That doesn't look like him." But and Harry goes, "Oh my God, if anybody ever sees this, they'll know." I
mean, one of the things that again I think was there at the start is the fact that we decided to do Harry as basically a nice guy, was that the readership really responded to that in a way that surprised me. It was almost, like the time, it came at the right time. People were ready for a good guy alien.
And he settles in very, very happily into human society. It's not a sort of a difficult process for him. I mean, he has to learn he has to learn the language and things. Yeah. But it's never a question to him that this is a good place to be. In fact, the location is very important as well. He finds himself in a town called Patience. I think in the comic it's in Washington State, isn't it? They moved it to Colorado for the TV show. This is interesting. Is it tactical that you put it in America? Because you're as English as I am, and Washington State is a very long way away.
It is a very long way away, and I chose deliberately to have him somewhere kind of rural, away from big cities and what have you, and living a quiet life. I mean, the reason it's America and not here is partly because I'm working for an American publisher. It's also, if I'd made it Scotland, I I'm not sure I could have pulled it off, and I don't think people would have been as interested.
But there is something remote about small town America when you
Yeah,
get into these
yeah.
farces. I mean, you could have put it on the Isle of Mull. That would have been
Yes,
far enough away.
yeah.
But somehow in Europe, you never get this far away from civilization. And
No, I think it's also the fact that because I've grown up with American comics and Hollywood and all the rest of it, to me, America is the great storytelling landscape.
it's Narnia, is it? It's
It kind of is. It kind of is.
El Dorado.
Well, I think the thing is that I am British. There's a lot of things about Britain I like, and some that I don't like. But to me, it's not. It doesn't have the romance. It's more mundane. So
You paint an attractive picture of small town life.
Yeah.
Again, I thought that you'd gone for that to get the dynamic of different kinds of people having to, because if you're in a big city, then cops can talk to cops, and doctors
Yeah.
can all have but in a small town, you've got one police chief and a deputy, you've got one doctor, you've got one mayor, so you have to have your cast all interacting with each other, with different kinds of people.
yeah.
And that was deliberate, wasn't it?
It was. The other thing was that with each book that we did, I would increase the supporting cast, not just for to have the murderer and a few red herrings, but also just to have a larger pool of people to interact and to make it more realistic.
Well, let's talk about some of the supporting cast. Tell me
Okay.
about Asta.
Asta. Well, being in that part of the world, it made sense for me to have a Native American, or in fact 2 Native Americans, because we've got a dad as well, as part of the cast.
Did you ever worry about that cultural appropriation, or did you ever have any nerves?
To be honest, the only people I've ever heard raise the issue are all sort of slightly nervous white people. Native American people, they absolutely don't have a problem.
Well, I don't think there's a problem in it.
No.
But we live in a very strange time.
We do live in a very strange time. It had strange repercussions in the TV show, where they cast someone who is Native American, or at any rate partly Native American, and even though she didn't grow up in a reservation or anything, they were very conscious of the whole issue, and so they brought in a kind of Native American media consultancy person, and ended up with Native American writers in the writers' room and what have you. But Chris Sheridan, the showrunner, said to me, he said, "Why did you bring in a Native American?" And I sort of said, "Well, basically because that part of the world, it seemed to make sense." And he said, "Well, you're right, it did make sense." But he said it had, this interesting kind of knock-on effect, because I think Yellowstone had started around about the same time, and that had a Native American cast member or whatever. But this was radical, both for them and Resident Alien. It's the first time it had ever happened. I think, probably since Jay Silverheels was playing Tonto, they just, or I guess there were some Native American people in Twin Peaks, but it wasn't it wasn't used.
There's a slightly Twin Peaks vibe as well, too.
I have to admit that was kind of in the back of my head. When I was thinking about isolated places, I could see pine trees.
Yeah.
and of course, everything being shot in Vancouver, for decades now. That's what Twin Peaks did. That's what the X-Files did. So, but I like that whole kind of pine forest thing. It kind of spoke of, slight wilderness thing.
So who is Asta to Harry? Initially, at least.
Initially, she's a nurse working in the medical clinic that hires Harry because their doctor's been murdered. And so their doctor and nurse, they become friends, and over the course of the books, without giving too much away.
Well, like any people solving crimes together.
Yeah. So
there's
there's a for many years it was a kind of will they, won't they situation, and in the later books you'll see how that turned out.
So Asta is a nurse to the medical practice, but Harry gets hired as a doctor. That's
Yeah.
not. I mean, it's not the usual route you would go for a recruitment process.
No, but the way that I bring Harry on stage is something that I've been kind of complimented on. There've been a few sort of storytelling twists like that, and in every case, it's been, I need something to happen. How do I solve this problem? And what my solution has been is the thing that makes it go in that direction. In Harry's case, the town needs a doctor because their doctor's just been killed, and so before they can kind of get anybody else to be a full-time replacement, they ask Harry to come in and help out. He's a kind of the local recluse who's reputed to be a doctor, and so
it's that, isn't it? The reputation, because you wouldn't just have any.
No,
bloke.
I mean he's they're kind of up against it because the coroner's coming and they got to do something.
So I want to ask, how alien is Harry? I mean, the crime solving could almost have been done without an alien, because a crime's a crime, and then there are clues and things. But he's, as well as being able to deflect people from seeing him as an alien, he's got some vaguely sort of empathetic psychic ability to divine whether people are telling the truth.
Yes, I mean it's just it's not exactly sort of blatantly telepathy, but he certainly got more of an edge than most of the people around him, and yet he doesn't let that kind of distance him from having friends, for example.
The FBI are after Harry. They know that something has happened, that something has crashed. I love the FBI passages, but I wondered, isn't there a kind of a plot problem? Either they don't catch up with him, so the soap opera aspect can keep going on, or they do catch up with him, and then the narrative dynamic changes because you're in.
Well, I think it's one of those things that, I mean, the whole thing grew very organically. And so a lot of these things were problems that reared their head as we went along. And I realized that there were sort of, that the issue of pursuit, the idea that there was somebody after Harry, was kind of very crucial to the sense of drama for the thing. But as you say, I mean, at some point, that has to be dealt with.
But we're not going to do spoilers.
Okay, no.
Because I thought you handled it extremely well. I want a word about the nature of collaboration on something like this. There's you and Steve Parkhouse. I want to know about the relationship between the writer and the... I mean, can you draw at all?
No. I've often said, I can't draw a straight line, but I can describe a straight line.
Well, actually, that's what I was going to ask. How detailed are your outlines for them?
Very.
There are some that, there's a writer called Brian K. Vaughan, and he puts things in the back of his books, and you can see that he's given detailed instructions to his artist.
Yeah.
And then there's the sort of the Stan Lee approach, which is, his outline will be Magneto comes back and the X-Men have to fight him again. And that's pretty much all Jack Kirby would have got.
Yes, but Jack Kirby was Jack Kirby, and that's what made it work. And the thing is all the people have used I mean, I don't mean to sort of insult hundreds of artists, but I'm about to. Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko could do that thing. I'm not sure anybody else could do it to the same degree of success. So I work what's called full script, and I learned how to do that from Alan Moore, who writes full script. Mm-hmm. And we go into immense amounts of detail.
Even to the extent of, say, how many panels you might have on a page. Or
yeah. I mean, I think my when it comes to panel description, I think the longest one I've ever written to describe one panel was 3 pages.
Wow!
But a lot of the time, it's just one line. A lot of the time, that one line is just similar to the panel before, or turn his head to the left or something like that. But it's one of those things that. I mean, Alan Moore says that he evolved his way of working as a result of working for things like 2000 AD, where you never knew which artist you were going to get. So you had to kind of give them as much information as possible to make the thing as good as possible. If they chose to ignore the information, that was kind of up to them. But at least you were sort of, giving it your best shot to make the thing turn out as good as possible.
Well, Steve Parkhouse isn't actually with us at the minute, so there's no downside to saying that the drawings are absolutely beautiful. He absolutely renders this gorgeously. It's an interesting thing. The people are very ordinary looking. Usually in comics, women are pneumatic and men are square-jawed and chiseled, and they're all just drop-dead gorgeous. These are very ordinary people. Interesting, nice, and they have their lives. Whose initiative was that? Was that you, or did Steve say he wanted to do it this way?
Well, Steve's kind of always worked that way, and I knew that. I did several stories with Steve many years ago, and his people are kind of both realistic and also slightly cartoony at the same time. And it's an approach that hardly anybody uses, but he does it really well.
You write in the introduction that when you started writing it, you thought this feels like a TV show.
Yeah.
It was almost always there. It wasn't inevitable, but it was almost always there. The TV show is different in important ways from the comic. Yeah. You're pretty chilled about that. That doesn't worry you at all, does it?
Well, I was very nervous up front, and and even though they told me it was going to be Alan Tudyk, and I thought, well, that's kind of dream casting.
Absolutely.
I was still very nervous.
He's one of the reasons I started watching.
Yeah. So, but I was very nervous when I sat down to watch the pilot, and after about 15, 20 minutes, my wife and I just sort of said, I'm really enjoying this, and I said, so am I. And so it was one of those things where I didn't have a problem with the fact that it wasn't faithful, because it was something different, but it was still good. I think if it had been different and bad, I would have felt very differently. But the net result seems to be that most people like both versions. And, that's really all I can ask for.
I read the whole thing in one sweep so far, because we were going to be talking about it. I really liked it that way, but of course, it wasn't written that way. What is the way? I mean, what is the better way of reading a narrative like this, episodically or from beginning to end?
I think it depends what you mean by an episode. If you're talking about the monthly comics, I don't think they're very satisfying. I mean, people that love comics have grown up with that, and you go into a comic shop on a Wednesday and there's your new comic and you take it away. But it's not. I think it's far more satisfying to sit down with, each one of the books is a 4-issue long story, and that's a satisfying read. Mm-hmm. And I think the omnibuses are even more of a satisfying read. You've got the 3 of those things in one. I think books are the future for comics. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
The collected, it is.
Yeah,
I mean, that is the way.
I mean, the monthly comics market is plummeting.
Am I right in thinking you're just one book away from the end of the whole thing? Right.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, the book 9 will be coming out this autumn as comics, and then as a book next year. And also about 6 months after the comic series is finished, there'll be a 28-page finale that will be kind of set the seal on the whole thing.
Well, you've got me on a cliff edge there, because you've set up an absolutely unmissable conclusion that I can't wait for. I sort of wish it had been there, but I'm going to have to wait.
You've got to wait a little longer.
Well, I'm not going to spoil it,
right,
but I thought it was absolutely marvellous.
Thank you. Glad you did.
So that is Peter Hogan and Steve Parkhouse, of course, Resident Alien. We've been discussing the whole series in one go, as far as we can. Peter, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Coming up next, Michelle Clement, The Art of Delivery, which styles itself the inside story of how the Blair government transformed Britain's public services. If you haven't yet subscribed to Books Podcast, it's free, and that way you'll be notified of new episodes as we post them.
That was the Books Podcast, presented by Tim Haig. Email Tim on tim@bookspodcast.com, Twitter @bookspodcast, and Facebook @bookspodcasttim.